one of the things that I came across that I was quite shocked to find is this right here, this red letter. I've always kind of dreamed of having Dutch doors. My wife made a pecan pie, and it was the first time I got to cool a pie on my sill of my Dutch door, which was kind of the dream. I was living in Tokyo, you know, trying to live the Tokyo dream, like living in what they call like a designer's mansion, kind of a fancy apartment. You know, in like 10 years, what am I gonna be doing? Like, am I gonna keep doing this? I didn't want to just be like in the city, just completely reliant. Crazy how productive cucumbers can be once they get going. I made this banister here. I kind of chiseled out this cool texture. This was actually the main house of the Hiraga clan.
So we've left Tokyo and we went about an hour west on the train to Uenohara. And then my friend Brian picked us up and took us to his house. And my friend Brian I've known since 7th grade. So we're longtime friends, you know, grew up together. So he's been in Japan almost 20 years now. 2 of the times I came to Japan, I was able to hang out with him, and we've traveled together in Japan. So we have a long history together. So it was really exciting to get to come to his house where he's been homesteading in Japan the last few years. And we're gonna get to show you what his lifestyle is here in Japan, out in the countryside. We've got to do a lot of different fun things, like go swimming in the river. I helped him, you know, work on his house and clean up some of his yard work, and get to see this really amazing area he's in, where all these houses are all wrapped around different homeowners' gardens. And we'll even get to see his house, which is right behind me. It's a house from the 1860s in Japan, has a lot of history, and he's been fixing it up. It's really, really interesting.
This is the genkan, the entrance. And this is where we've probably put the most work into the house so far. When we came here, like, you could walk in this door and there was a little narrow strip that you could walk into, because it was just full of like generations of people's stuff. So like the first year was just like, just moving things out, just getting rid of everything.
Wow.
It just took so much time, but now we've, you know, added so much more real estate. So the kitchen's right here. That's the back door that we just, I was showing you. Originally, you would step up here, and there was a sliding door here, and then you'd walk into the kitchen. But the kitchen was, the floor was all rotted. The counter was like probably built in the 70s or 60s or something. So we just gutted the whole thing. So if you look here, this is where the floor originally was.
Oh, whoa.
There's you can kind of see where like a floorboard went in there. Yeah, so it was up here, so gutted it, kind of rammed the earth to make everything flat and poured concrete. Next job here is to actually lay tile, but haven't gotten that far. And then I built all these kitchen counters. These boards right here are called, this is Zelkova elm. I don't know if Zelkova elm is something really known in the States. It's probably more found in like Russia, Siberia, Japan, Korea, northern China. But yeah, it's a type of elm. It's a really hard wood. It's like very prized in Japan. Like this is the main pillar of the house right here. It's called the Daikoku Bashira. That is made of elm. They use hardwoods like that for the pillars that are sat on stones, so that termites can't eat into that kind of hardwood. If you use anything else, the termites will eat into from the bottom. Right. They'll go up and then they'll get into the beams. And beams are almost always made of pine because they have more flexibility. They're a little lighter. It's a good beam material, but termites love pine, so you got to keep them out of the pine. So yeah, so I mean that's a beautiful elm, Daikoku Bashira. I mean, it's hard. It would be hard to find a tree that you could do that with these days. And if you did, it'd be thousands of dollars for sure.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, things like that, when you see that, is really cool. And this house especially has seemed like they chose really good wood at the time that it was built. Like they, you know, this was actually the main house of the Hiraga clan. So this village has, I think, 3, maybe 4 clans. It's interesting in Japan because like almost everybody in my neighborhood right here is named Hiraga. So when I came here, I thought, oh, they're all relatives, but they're not. The name just goes back to their like clan, I guess you would call it. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're related by blood. They're just a group of people that were together, if that makes sense. So there's a main house for each of the names. There's Hiraga, Harada, Omata, and Amano. And so this is the main Hiraga house. And then from that, like they'll have a son or a daughter or whatever, and then they'll branch off into a new house. So this was like, they call it the honke. So this is the honke. So yeah, they probably put some decent work into it. So, but these, anyways, back to my point, these boards were, when I came here and I cleaned out all the garbage that people had been storing up, these boards were tucked away in the very, very back.
Oh, interesting.
And these are thick Zelkova elm slabs.
That's cool.
I mean, easily worth $2,000 for one slab, you know?
Whoa.
And they were just sitting back there. There's like 10 of them.
Score.
I think they might be offcuts from the, when they made the beams,
yeah.
maybe. So yeah, we turned them into counter.
That's beautiful. What is this? The big.
This is
centerpiece
chestnut.
Wow. Where did that come from?
This came from the carpenter that I'm working with. He brought this over. So my original idea was I wanted to have kind of an arch here, and we wanted the sink and kind of the cooking area to be south facing towards the entrance, so that, you know, when people come, when there's any action happening towards the front of the house, you're already facing that way. We don't want our back towards where the action is, basically.
Yeah.
So, you know, if there's dogs or maybe kids, you can sit here and wash dishes and cook, and you can keep an eye on everything that's going on. And so I thought an arch would look really cool, and I was gonna just do like a plywood, like you kind of bend plywood and you make an arch and then like plaster it. But then the carpenter I was working with was like, no, why don't you just use this? I have this beautiful piece of chestnut, and it'll work as an arch. So
Yeah, that looks awesome.
Yeah, it looks really cool. It's a nice statement piece coming in. And then, so like we've used a lot of copper as well. Copper is kind of a great, it looks cool, but it's also kind of a great material for masking things, sort of, just like cladding, you know? Like this elm piece comes to about here. So what we did is then the rest of this is just, you know, 2x4s and plywood and stuff. And then you just clad over it with copper, and then there's another little elm cut off piece on this side. So it looks like it's kind of one continuous piece, but it's nice for covering stuff. It's nice on stuff like this too, where like the bottom of this pillar, like from here down, was rotted. So you cut out the rotten bit and you kind of fabricate a new piece and slide that in, and then we just covered over it with this copper boot. Same thing with my kitchen hood here. So, you know, I put in this vent hood, and then we just built like a plywood box on the top and just kind of gave it this little kind of steampunk look.
I love it.
Yeah. And then, you know, our kitchen island is like, a lot of things here are impromptu at the moment. You know, this is just a dresser that we found upstairs. So I'm actually want to build a nice proper kitchen island, but that's what we got so far. And then these windows here. So this was like, you know, this was just a wall, or it was just like sliding doors, but they were all busted and like, you know, there's like openings like on the sides, so like cold air just rushes through. So we just demoed all that, built new walls, put some bracing in here, like diagonal braces. And then I actually, well, with the help of somebody, built these windows from scratch, basically.
Whoa.
Which I don't recommend, actually. It was kind of way more work than it was probably worth. But it looks cool because it kind of looks like a one-off, you know? You wouldn't be able to buy windows like that. And if you get close, you can see the handles here are made from deer antler. And they open like this.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I like that kind of stuff. I like that kind of, I don't know what you would call it, kind of a fantasy sort of steampunk or something just weird, you know? Kind of a mix of maybe like, I've looked at a lot of Dutch influences or like colonial houses and kind of try to blend that with the Japanese taste. And then this was gonna be a door handle. A blacksmith friend of mine made this like weird lizard thing. And so this was gonna be like put on as a door handle. Haven't gotten to that point yet, so it's become this like, this is called katori senko. This keeps mosquitoes away. It's made actually from the cherry tree, the sakura tree.
Oh.
There's like, when you strip the bark off, like inside of the bark, there's some compound that is good for keeping mosquitoes away. Actually, if anybody's ever heard of Thermacell,
Yeah.
that's made from the exact same stuff as this,
Okay.
but they vaporize it instead of just burn it. So yeah, same deal. So yeah, just keep that burning for the mosquitoes.
So yeah, where you live is pretty interesting, and I was really surprised to just see all these huge, you know, amazing gardens out here. And
Yeah.
and just how you're able to work with all your neighbors so well. And yeah, it's really interesting
Yeah,
setup.
this is a cool spot because even though we're out in the country and, you know, Japan is kind of, the population is declining, we still have some pretty good activity in our village. You know, people are, it's hot, it's like the middle of the afternoon right now, so nobody's out here. But typically there's like, you know, there's people in these fields, and so everybody's communicating with each other, talking to each other, exchanging, sharing their crops.
So what brought you here ultimately to Yamanashi? Because, you know, you went to college here in Japan. That's how kind of you got your start here, and then you went to lived in Tokyo. You've worked in Japan. You're completely fluent in Japanese. So yeah, kind of tell us.
So yeah, I was living in Tokyo, you know, trying to live the Tokyo dream, like living in what they call like a designer's mansion, kind of a fancy apartment. You know, paying a lot for that, working at like a media company in Shibuya, kind of like in the like fashion sort of industry. And I don't know, just like a lot of people's story, you know, you kind of lose like, you know, in like 10 years, what am I going to be doing? Like, am I going to keep doing this? Like, everything's so expensive, and am I really that happy? And the truth of it is, I met some backpackers at like a party, and they were just backpacking through Japan, and they were going to go to the Kumano Kodo, which is like a really famous hiking trail down south in Wakayama. And I had heard of it, and I wanted to go. And at the time, I was kind of into like rock climbing and hiking and stuff. So I decided to just tag along with them. And I went for 10 days, and I just walked the Kumano Kodo. And it just kind of, everything came out of me, you know? Like, just everything from the city, all my worries and anxieties, just like, you know, just sleeping, you know, having just like a sleeping bag and tent on my back, and just sleeping in the mountains and for like 10 days, and just really focusing on like, what am I thankful for and stuff like that. And I wanted to make myself like more capable, you know? I didn't want to just be like in the city, just completely reliant on just like modern society in the city, basically. I wanted to try something out on my own. And, you know, we've been friends for a long time, and our friend Jared was became a farmer, and that kind of, you know, that kind of showed me that world. And so I got more interested in maybe trying something like that. And after that backpacking trip, I came back to Tokyo, and then a few weekends later, I went on, there's a mountain here called Mount Takao. It's kind of like when people want to take a little day hike, they go to Mount Takao. It's close to Tokyo. And most people just walk straight up it and then go back down. But what I did is I wanted to go backpacking for a few days. So I walked up, and then I went down the backside. And when you get down the backside, you're kind of out in the country. And I just kept going, and it follows a trail that I had researched. And it's like an old ancient trail that goes from Tokyo all the way to Kyoto. You could keep walking it. So I walked for about 3 days, and during that time, I had come over like the third peak, I think, that I had hiked. It was like 3 or 4 different mountains. And I came down into this little town, and I met a guy who was just like barbecuing in his front yard, like in this little village. And he just started talking to me. We had a beer together, and I joined him for the barbecue, and then his friends came over that night, and I met all of them, and they were just all, it was nothing like I had experienced in Tokyo before. They were totally different people. It was a side of Japan I had never seen. Even being in Tokyo for 10 years, it was like a new world. And I really got along with all of them. And then so after that, I was still living in Tokyo, but I started coming out to visit them on the weekends. So like every weekend I was out doing stuff with them. And then I just kind of decided like, hey, I'm just gonna live out here. I got a little apartment out here. It was like, you know, $300 a month. You know, I was paying like almost $2,000 a month in Tokyo, which is actually not that bad. I think probably the Americans watching this are probably like, oh, that's nothing. But for Tokyo, you know, it's, you know, and it's not big either. But yeah, I was like, you know, so I was able to save a bunch of money. I could keep working because I work remote. And so I did that for like a year and a half. And then just being out here, meeting Byron, who we just went and visited. He was kind of doing a similar thing. He had come out of Tokyo and was kind of figured out in the country life. So I saw what he was doing. And I was just keeping my eyes open for something, you know. I really wanted to find like a house, like what they call a kominka. It's like a old farmhouse or like a Japanese folk house. And kominkas are usually like 100 to 150 years old. And so I was really interested in maybe finding one of those, but they're you know, they're prevalent, but to actually be able to rent one or buy one, they're pretty few and far between. And, you know, I guess it was God's will, or I don't know what it was, but we found something, you know, just right next to my friend Byron. It's an amazing house that's been, you know, it's a little bit in disrepair, but like the roof was fine, all the pillars are good, there's no termite damage. You know, it was like kind of a dream come true, honestly. And then it has like a big, you know, we have like, I don't know how much of an acre this is, half, I don't know, I'm not
So it's
not
like
really
from,
good.
oh yeah, so like beyond that corn.
From
the
where
next
those figs
terrace
are, you can
down.
see the figs,
Yeah, the figs.
the figs down to my house, basically.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you can do so much. Yeah.
Maybe a half acre, a little less.
Yeah, probably a little less than a half acre,
less
I'd
than
say.
that, yeah.
And then not only that, but there's like plots all over the place that people aren't using.
That you
so
can talk
you
to
can
and-
just walk up to some, you know, you get to know somebody and, oh, can I use that plot?
Yeah.
You know, I have one down there that I was using for tomatoes. Even this one right here, I'm going to plant sweet potatoes. That's the plant, and that's not even mine. But it's like if you offer, oh yeah, I'll cut the grass and I'll cultivate it,
Yeah.
and people are down. And so yeah, there's a lot of opportunity out here for young people. It kind of makes me sad, honestly, that there's not more young Japanese people who see the opportunity out here and come out here. And I mean, being a farmer's tough. I mean, Japanese people don't look at farming as anything glamorous, and vegetables are cheap here. It's really hard to make a living. I've met some younger people who are kind of, you know, similar thought process as me, and they want to do farming and stuff. But not only farming, there's so many other things you could do out here. You could start a wood shop and make furniture. There's a million things you could do out here. There's so much opportunity. I mean, people have been living in this village for at least like 500 years.
Yeah.
And so there's like an infrastructure like carved into this place. And, you know, if nobody takes care of it, it's kind of just going to deteriorate.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it's not that far from Tokyo, as probably you were mentioning. So, you know, I still have some clients in Tokyo, so it's very easy to go there.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is like perfect for me.
Really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go down to your house and check out.
Yeah, let's do
What
that.
you've been working on. Cool.
Me and Steve have been hanging out, so I didn't get eggs this morning, but now I got them.
Really cool. Yeah, a little chicken tractor here.
Yeah, so, you know, it's not really being used as a mobile coop at the moment. I mean, we have predators, so they need to stay safe. So I built kind of an outer enclosure, and then they have an inner enclosure. I like to feed them some meat from time to time.
Yeah,
so,
we got a deer. There'll be another video I put out about harvesting this deer. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we got a deer carcass here for them, and yeah, you know, during the day I like to let them out. I think it's important that chickens get their daily greens. This year, I've been really focusing on work and on renovating the house, so things out here in the field are kind of a mess, but we're still making a good go of it. This right here, I don't know if people recognize this. It's called kikuimo. I think it's known as Jerusalem artichoke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Jerusalem artichoke. I'm not really a big fan of eating it, but the chickens really love it. And when I had the goats here, they love it too. So I'd put the goats up here and they go nuts on it. They love it. And I don't know, I think that just, this is all voluntary as well. So like,
Wow.
just like a couple years of just kind of letting it go, and it's just turned into this like kind of hedgerow type deal.
That's cool.
And you know, it's great because I can just come out here and I can just break off a little. And if the chickens are in the coop, you know, just give them this so they have something to kind of munch on. I've been getting into that recently, like kind of letting things just kind of voluntarily happen and then kind of encourage it. This is an interesting thing here too. This is called karamushi. It's just a weed really, but this is great fodder for the goats. The chickens like it. This was also used as like kind of like a linen, sort of, not linen, it's almost like hemp. They can take strands from the stem and turn it into like a textile.
Interesting.
So yeah, down here I was growing wheat. I just harvested it like last week. It's been threshed. I'm gonna use my friend's electric winnower and get it all nice and clean. And then I will take it to another place nearby and have them turn it into flour. I've tried making flour myself, but it's very difficult to sift. And if you just use like a little electric one, it's nice, but like it leaves so much of the germ that it's kind of hard to bake with. Like it's so heavy. So if I just take it to a nearby mill, it's really cheap to have it milled. They make beautiful flour out of it, and they give me the whole wheat separate,
That's cool.
or the whatever it's called, the like husk germ, I guess.
Interesting. And then you make bread out of it.
Make bread, make whatever out of it. Yeah, I'm doing. I mean, in Japan, it's common to grow what they call churiki, so I guess like all-purpose, like for noodles and stuff. But I've been growing bread grade flour, like high protein. I need to get out here and do some weeding, but it's still doing okay. This is actually peanuts and corn. Corn hasn't even been thinned. There's like 2 stalks here and there, but the peanuts are looking all right. I really like growing peanuts. They're really good. Let's see what else we got going on. This is my dog Cece. She's curious.
Yeah, Cece's been a good girl. She goes everywhere with us.
Yeah, I like growing dill a lot too. So like I've just let this dill go, and this will just go to seed. And if you look down there, you can see there's some dill growing, like just randomly. That was from last year. Like I grew dill down there, and I just let it flower, and the seeds dropped everywhere. And now there's dill growing down there.
Nice.
I don't know if you can see. You can see too. There's some red Russian kale. That was from like 3 years ago. I just let the kale go to seed, and now there's just like wild kale down there. So I just kind of want to like, you know, create like invasive species of good stuff.
That's cool. I like that strategy.
Yeah. And then I have, this is kind of what I've been really into recently. I pruned these this winter. I don't know if I did a great job, but these are my figs. They're in like their 4th year right now.
Oh, wow. Oh, there's a bunch of figs all over them.
Yeah, they're pretty productive. You know, I haven't really learned like the actual technique. Like when you look at Japanese fig production, they like bend the main like trunk of it down to the ground, and then they graft more like, you know, newer things onto it. But yeah, I just prune these in the winter basically, and that seemed to be enough. And then there's, this is getting wild again, but there's comfrey here.
Yeah, those are huge.
And the comfrey seems to be a really good partner with the figs because it I think it kind of like shades the ground and like keeps the soil like covered. And what I've heard about comfrey is that it has a taproot, right? So it's going really deep.
Yeah.
And so I think it's helping to bring up nutrients. At least that's the idea.
You ever chop and drop it or mulch with it?
You know, the chickens, usually when I let them out, they find their way up here and they really like it. So the chickens will always be up here doing it. Yeah, maybe I could. Yeah, well, I'll come through here with the weed whacker if it gets too crazy. Next week, the whole village is going to get together and do the annual like weed whacking of the entire village. So usually on that day, I'll do all my fields. This was all garlic and onion that was harvested last month.
That's hanging up in your house.
That's hanging up. Yeah, we'll go take a look at that. So I kind of wanted to go all in on garlic. I really like growing garlic, and it's a good crop because domestic garlic in Japan gets a really good price. Most garlic is either Chinese or from Spain, and it's pretty cheap. But if like domestic garlic, like 2 cloves go for like $4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and people are into it too. So that's one. I think when you're on a small plot like this, you really need to think about what you're growing and what the price can be. That's what everyone around here tells me. Like there's one guy, this field right here, this guy's growing these green onions. He's very good at that. He only grows things that he knows he can get a good price per unit because we just aren't doing volume out here, you know? It's all small scale. So he's growing things like ginger, garlic, yamaimo, which is like those cassava things I was showing you. The things like that fetch a pretty high price. So, but things like broccoli and cabbage and that, like we just can't compete with big farms when it comes to that. So might grow a little bit of that for ourselves, but that's about it.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Look.
He's got some kind of like
looks like rice bran around the.
Yeah, it looks like the husk from rice that he's just like kind of bokashi'd or used as like a cover. Probably because it's so hot and nothing's irrigated. So, you know, as long as you keep things covered out here, we get enough rain to where the soil gets wet. And as long as you don't let that water evaporate, there's not really much need for irrigation out here. Nobody irrigates.
Really?
No.
Wow, that's pretty neat. So the summers are pretty rainy here.
Summers are rainy. I mean, it's rainy. We get enough rain year round, except for maybe in the winter. But because of the crops that we're growing in the winter, they don't really need the water. The only time they would need water is like if you're gonna sprout something, if you're trying to germinate, you might get out here with a hose or maybe some watering cans. Also, we use a lot of cloches.
What's that?
like a row cover.
Oh yeah.
So like a fabric row cover. After you seed, just stick it straight on the ground, just to keep, water will penetrate through, and then that white will reflect light and stuff, so things will stay. Like for example, I'll do carrots. I'll plant carrots in March.
Okay.
And it's dry in March. We're not going to get a lot of rain until, say, end of April or May.
Okay.
So then I would have to hand water and then make sure it's covered so that it doesn't evaporate right away. And that works pretty great. I mean, maybe getting a little bit of irrigation would be good, but it's just really not worth it. It's not at that level.
Yeah.
So yeah, like for example, this plot, somebody who lives in the city is actually borrowing this from the owner, and they come out on the weekends and they just do a little farming. That's actually becoming more of a common thing. Like if you have a friend who's out here who has some land that they're not using, people from the city will rent it, and then they come out and they're kind of like weekend farmers.
That's cool.
Yeah. Actually, that's a kind of a good way to make money. You can rent out a plot to somebody for like a pretty good price.
Yeah.
So this is kind of my mess of firewood, but I have this is basically the compost that I use. This should be covered. It's getting a little hot and dry, but I got kind of the Johnson Sioux thing going on.
Nice.
And this is just straight horse manure from a horse corral near here. Huh. And it's nice because they just clean it out and it's already mixed with wood chips or like wood shavings. So I don't even do anything.
That's cool.
It already has enough, it basically has enough moisture. If it rains on it once, then it gets wet enough. We do a kimchi event every year. We've done it for the last 3 years, where I'll grow all the peppers, all the Napa cabbages, the garlic, all the stuff, and then we have like 30 people come over and make kimchi, and then everybody splits it up. We're gonna be gone this summer, so I decided just to randomly do some eggplants because I never tried them before. And growing eggplants is like the same as growing peppers. They're the same family, so it's kind of the same deal. And that and my cucumbers.
Yeah, we've been eating those.
Yeah, it's crazy how productive cucumbers can be once they get going. I mean, now that it's getting hot, these things are just growing like crazy.
What variety is this?
Some Japanese variety. I don't even remember. I'd have to look at the name.
It's like a thin-skinned.
Yeah, they're thin-skinned. They're not really that fat.
It's a nice slicing cucumber.
Yeah. Often used in like there's like a certain type of pickling that they do in Japan called nukazuke. They take the rice bran and they like stick the cucumbers like into the rice bran. I think the rice bran's mixed with something else, probably like salt and stuff, and then they ferment it in there.
Cool.
Oh, I should probably take this. So yeah,
nice.
It's kind of what they are. That's about what you want them to be harvested.
Yeah.
You don't want them to get too fat.
It looks tasty.
Yeah. Do you want to scope this, or I'll show you. I'm a little embarrassed because this place is always kind of in flux. But basically, I've done a lot of work out here, honestly. Like, when we came, these rocks right here were like here. So it was a little narrow path.
Yeah.
And then it kind of dropped down and there's this area. But I wanted to be able to get a truck out back here. So we just took the wall apart, moved it, and then filled it in. And then now we can get a little truck back here. And that helps when I want to deliver materials for working on the house.
Yeah. Let's go check out he just put in some double Dutch doors.
Yeah, I put in these Dutch doors, which these were custom built by a carpenter that's helping me. I've always kind of dreamed of having Dutch doors, and now we finally have them. Actually, the only part that's not done is the metal thing for this, but I can open this at least.
That's cool. This
is just held down with a screw, but this actually opens.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has 4, separate pieces.
Yeah, I thought the handle's really neat.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who did it's like an amazing artist, so he does some really great stuff. The other day, my wife made a pecan pie, and it was the first time I got to cool a pie on my sill of my Dutch door, which was kind of the dream, so.
That's special.
That was a, special moment. And I just put this stone in as well, little stone floor here. I had kind of gone back and forth about what to do about the floor here. I want this to kind of be like what they call, I guess, like a mud room maybe in the South. Like you can come in, you can make it dirty, take off your boots and stuff, and then you would either go up there into the house or you could go in this way. So at least, it's this is kind of an area that can semi get dirty. So that's the kitchen, you know, just kind of working on it. There's a lot more to do still, but we've come a long way. At least we have a kitchen that we can use. The carpenter that I'm working with, he's also a great metal worker. And when he remodeled his house, he built his own wood-burning stove. So this is his Mark II version of his stove. He kind of updated it a little bit, and I think he learned a few things from his experience. And so this is just an old compressor, air compressor tank. Air compressor tanks are really good for a stove because they have the size. And then he just welded these legs on, cut out the front, and made the door. This was a great addition. He doesn't have this on his, but this little grate, it was from a fireplace. That's really great because when you open this, things don't fall out. Nice. And then these are you can let the air in when you're getting it going, and then once it's burning real hot, you can close those. And then this is kind of interesting too, to load wood into it. It's a top loader. Which is great because when you're loading more firewood in and it's burning super hot, you don't really want to open the front and let stuff fall out. So having the top loading is really cool.
That's cool. I mean, could you cook on the top of this thing too?
That's why it's made like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, typically we just boil water. So like in the winter, put on a kettle, just stick that on here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really, I mean, we have gas, you know, so I don't really need to, but I wanted to have something that, you know, when the shit hits the fan and there's no gas and anything like that, we at least can still
boil water.
We can boil water, we can cook, we can do whatever. So it's kind of a backup.
And this is the major heat source for your house, other than maybe some electric heaters.
It is the major heat source. We're still kind of figuring that out because this house is so big. So the heat just is gone, you know, basically.
And in Japan, they don't really heat their house a lot of times, right?
I mean, a lot of people who live in places like, you know, like where we are now, where we have winter, they have wood-burning stoves.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, the modern...
It's not like central air.
There's, no. There's no central, really. There might be some very new houses might be starting to do that, but typically Japanese houses have never had central heating or air. It's usually air conditioners in each room, and those air conditioners can usually double as heaters, or as heaters, but... I don't like using those. They make the air feel really horrible. I think they make people sick. And so when, you know, originally there was a ceiling here, but we've taken the ceiling out and we wanted to give the entrance that kind of open feel. And as you can see, we're kind of still building walls around it. I just recently built this banister.
Yeah, we should go up there.
Which is a lot of, that was a fun project. Where I am replacing the ceiling, I'm replacing it with these, Keikaruban, I don't know what that's called in English, but they're white and they're fire resistant. I'm kind of going with the black and white look. All of this wood is black because originally, back in the day, people had it was probably somewhere around here. They had like a charcoal burning pit called a irori, and so the smoke from decades and decades has blackened everything.
Wow.
So yeah, when this house was originally built, it was probably quite bright colored wood. But I sort of like the white on black look, I think, for this house. So yeah, one big project was redoing this entire floor. As I mentioned, like, if you buy an old Japanese house, probably the first must is redoing the floors because the moisture is down there, so things are gonna rot. You know, it's been 150 plus years. So you're obviously going to have rot. And also the floors are usually pretty janky because at the time that this was built, there were no electric or sawmills. You know, they were milling things by hand. So they were doing their best to get flat boards. But when you pull them up, it's just like they're all different. Like they're not uniform.
Yeah, and you'll see up top, you can kind of see how they hand chiseled the
you can look at the different wood and you can see the generations. Like you can see where it was done by hand, you can see where it was done by chainsaw, so you can kind of see the progress over the years. But so we just took the floor out, we put gravel and plastic down to keep the moisture from coming up. Vapor barrier, yeah. And then we just redid all the joists. And so these boards were the original boards that were under the tatami. And so I just reused them. I think I'm going to eventually change it to some new flooring because I don't really like how dark it is. But for now, it works, you know, just trying to reuse things. And then this here, it's kind of weird having a hole in the middle of the floor, but this is a kotatsu. And so most houses have a kotatsu. This house had a kotatsu, so I figured that when we redid the floor, we had to put one back in. It's just basically, in the winter, there'll be a table here with a blanket over it. And then people stick their legs, they sit here and they stick their legs inside of the blanket, and there's a little heater under it. So we have a little electric heater that we put in here, and you can just sit here and eat and work or whatever, and just you kind of stay warm under here. The reason what I'm trying to do is I'm going to try to create a table where you can push it down and have it retract, so that there's a floor here, and then in the winter when you want to use it, you can pop it back up. But I haven't really figured out exactly how that's going to work, so still kind of thinking about the design for that. And so, yeah, we're trying to, the concept also is like having light come in. We want light to come in. So when we took the ceiling out of here, there was originally a ceiling on top of this beam. We took that out, and when we built this wall here, we left an opening because that's west, so we want that western light to come through. And anywhere that we can, trying to leave openings for airflow and for light. One of the great things about these houses is they get such good airflow. Yeah. So during the summer, even though it's hot outside, this house stays pretty cool. It can be pretty passive. I mean, we have an office in there, and because my wife and I are working pretty much all day in there, we did get an air conditioner because she doesn't want to be like on Zoom and be sweating and stuff. But you know, as you can see right now, it's warm in here, but it's like it's not stuffy and like humid, and it doesn't feel that bad.
Yeah, the air feels fresh.
Yeah, it feels nice and fresh. So you really want to keep certain, you know, you want to really think about airflow, even the flow of air under the house, the flow of air through the roof. And because this house is like that, that's why there's not rot, you know? That's why there's not mold, because the airflow is so good. And we've done some little things. You can kind of check this out. This is just a little pantry that we made. This was like a store. This right here was like a butsudan. So it's like their ancestral, like, you know, it's like a shrine. They open it up and they put their stuff in it. But that's now gone. We moved it and we opened up this little passage through here, and we just created a pantry. I mean, it's just...
What are these walls made of? It's like a...
So this is the original earthen wall. Yeah, so what they would do is they would lattice together little bamboo. You can see that's a little piece of bamboo there. And that's latticed kind of into these. These are called the nuki. This is like, you know, you have the pillar here and the nuki of the wall go in there. And then you have this lattice bamboo, and then they just mud onto that. I have some clay. So I think eventually I'll just do another layer on top of this because it'll stick really well to this that's already here. But yeah, this is the original, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, it's not very insulative.
Yeah.
It has a low R factor, I think it's called. So not really the best for insulation, but I mean, probably a good material for the time. I don't know what else people would have done 150 years ago. So, I mean, one thing that's fascinating about this house is, you know, there's been, you know, many generations that have lived here previous to me coming here, and the history is still here. And a lot of it was just left here. You know, people went to Tokyo when the job opportunities opened up, and they kind of left. A lot of people stayed, but a lot of people, I think the people who were in this house were quite educated, and they decided to take jobs in Tokyo, and so they left their life here behind. And one of the things that I came across that I was quite shocked to find is this right here, this red letter. People might know what this is. This is a conscription, I guess a notice of conscription from World War II. So this would have come in the mail, and I don't know whose name this is exactly, but I imagine a young male from this house then had to go join the military.
Wow.
And I've seen the military photo albums as well. I can put up the photos later for you. And it's, you know, it's just so interesting to see, like, when looking at those photos of when, what I assume was probably when he was first sent to training before they actually went to war, it just looks like him and his buddies having a good time at military camp, you know? And it's like they didn't know what they were in for, you know? They weren't the people making the decisions. You know, they weren't the emperor deciding to go invade these countries, and they didn't know what the US military would look like, you know, what the enemy would look like. They were just like them and all their friends, you know, young kids going to train for the military, and you know, I don't know what happened to them after that, you know.
Right,
But
yeah.
it's just, I mean, for this still to be here and to think that that was 80 years ago,
Yeah.
you know, it's just like, it makes it so real. And it makes me so happy that we've overcome that, and that now the US and Japan are such good allies. You know, people say things about the military, the US military being here, that like, you know, they don't have the right to be here, et cetera. But I do think it's for the best. And I think that it's so cool that we're not enemies, and that we're sharing technology now, we're sharing information, and that we get along so well. I mean, it's incredible to think that one generation ago we were like mortal enemies.
Yeah.
And just to see a relic like that from that past, it just really makes it real, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of made me think when I saw this letter, I was like, well, guys in the US got
They
a
did, yeah.
draft letter, something
did.
like this too.
Yeah.
And just these, you know, these big governments, these big, you know, elite people are taking these normal, common folk, you know, grabbing them up and then just sending them off to die, and how
Yeah.
crazy that is when you really think about, you know, what that is.
Yeah, I think the real story of World War II is just everybody all of the masses being fooled into fighting each other.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have at that time, they couldn't just call each other up, you know. Like now, if something were to kick off between America and Japan, we can talk to each other, you know. There's so much, you know, cross-cultural exchange that we know each other now.
Yeah, you can't paint them as these savages
you
anymore like they
can't-
did
you
with
can't
all the
get
war propaganda. And
Yeah,
it's way harder.
you can't get away with the lies anymore.
Yeah.
But back in the day, I mean, they had probably never seen an American in their life,
Right.
you know? So it'd be so easy to fool those people.
Yeah.
And it happened in countries all over the world. So
It's still going on,
It's
unfortunately.
it's still going on. I mean,
Not at the same level, I guess, but
I guess it's kind of a different story. I mean, maybe we don't have to get into it, but I mean, I guess the lies are becoming more sophisticated, I guess you could say.
yeah. But also, people are noticing it more now too.
For sure. I mean, there will never be a day that Japan and America go to war with each other again.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine that.
I can't either.
So one reason why these houses are 2 or 3 floors is because they did silk production. So all up here was silkworms. I don't really know why they had to be on the second floor. I don't really know much about silkworm production, but most of the houses around here were kind of designed around silk production. And that's how they made their money. I think actually this house was probably relatively wealthy from silk. And so people might have slept on this second floor here, but it was probably mostly for the silkworms. That's why it's a little bit lower than the other floors. And also people probably were shorter, so it probably didn't feel that low to them. Yeah, I made this banister here, a little dusty, but yeah, I kind of chiseled out this cool texture.
That was neat.
Yeah, and
Is this the Shoshugiban where you burnt it and everything too, or why is
yeah,
it?
I don't know if that's exactly the right phrase that you've used there, because that's usually for cedar. These are actually, I think this is ash. It's either ash or some kind of oak. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, I did burn them. I had like a big torch, and I burned them and then brushed them. I have like a angle grinder with a brush on it. Brush them down, and then wax them, like some oil and wax, just to kind of blend it with the black that's already going on. That's why I think everything else, like, you know, these will be walls. So this is going to be white, because I need to start, like, all this plywood here is going to eventually be white.
Yeah.
So once everything's white, I think that everything's going to pop a lot more. Everything looks kind of dark because everything is so black, but once we get everything plastered white, I think it'll bring a lot more light in. So yeah, you know, I've kind of redone the floor here. I've added these pillars here. I mean, one thing when it comes, people probably wonder about earthquakes, right?
Yeah.
So the way that I guess Japanese architecture has developed around earthquakes is that houses are required to have a certain number of walls, because walls are where your kind of structural point is, right? But these old houses, they were not built with walls. I mean, like that one that I showed you with the kind of cob stuff, that's probably one of the only walls. Everything else are like sliding doors.
And pillars.
And yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah, and pillars. So the pillars are just sitting on each other. There's no like truss or like braces. So one thing to kind of, you know, help shore up the strength is to add walls. And within those walls to add these, the thing is with stuff like this, I only know the Japanese name. These are called sujikai. I guess this is a brace. More diagonals, you know, triangles are strong, right? So put in triangles and also putting in some metal brackets. Like you can see here, I've added like a metal bracket there. And then these, like these pillars that I put in, by using these bolts that go through the top and then putting one down here, what this pillar is doing is it's pulling in both directions. So it's kind of cinching it's cinching everything together basically. It's not just sitting here, you know? So that's added a lot of strength. That and also even putting plywood as the wall instead of drywall, because the plywood, you put so many screws in that it really adds a lot of shear strength. So yeah, I've opted for plywood instead of drywall. It's more expensive, but it will add a lot more strength. And yeah, you know, we've had to do little things like replace, like this was rotted. So this is a new, like, it's not even a beam, but it's just kind of like this in-between piece between these pillars.
Oh yeah, here you can kind of see the
Yeah, you can
scratches.
see the marks. That was, I think, probably made with an adze. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. The tool in English is ADZE. In Japanese, it's called a chona. And maybe you can find some B-roll of somebody using a chona. And that's how these were probably hewn. These might even be axe hewn. You see there's the Japanese dudes like bare feet sitting on top of logs and they have an axe and they'll hew the sides like that. And then usually after they do it with an axe, they'll use an adze to clean it up.
Interesting.
But yeah, this is all just still kind of a work in progress back here. This is kind of my impromptu workshop. It's so hot right now that I've kind of taken a break from working up here, and I'll probably start again in the fall. No hurry, you know. I want to enjoy it, you know. At first it was kind of stressful because it was a lot to take on, but with something like this, it's like, might as well just take it slow and enjoy it, you know.
Yeah.
And then this is the third floor. This is where I think the house is really going to become amazing because there's so much room up here. Please be careful because it's kind of janky. When we came up here, it was full of stuff and like old stuff, like probably stuff from like the 20s, 30s, and even older. I found a textbook that was like from the 1890s up here.
Oh my God.
So like everyone, I think like when they just left all their old furniture and stuff up here. So it took me like a few months just to get everything down. I made I hung a winch from the beam over there and just used a pallet to just lower things down. As you can see, there's still kind of some stuff up here. But it's kind of to the point now where I can kind of start redoing the floor and start actually thinking about maybe starting to actually work up here and create some rooms, and because this will be a great living space. Yeah, and this will be great for winter too because the wood stove is right here. So if I make a winter bedroom up here, we get all that heat directly under us.
Oh, box.
That goes to the chimney up there. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, so I think that our winter bedroom is going to have to be up here on the third floor because it'll be nice and warm up here.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, but in the summer, as you can feel, it's hot.
It's much hotter.
It's really hot up here, yeah.
Now we're going to head over to Brian's friend's house, Byron, to show you guys a permaculture property set up here in Japan with a house that was built completely from scratch using all sorts of really cool techniques that I think you guys are really going to find interesting.